Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Good evening, afternoon, or good morning, depending on when you're listening to this show. But if you're listening now, it is live, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And do the math for the other times around the world. We are brought to you each week on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. You can hear us live by going to their website, which is kgradb.com at 7 Eastern Standard, and clicking on live stream at the top of the page on their website, and you are there. However, you can also listen to past programs anytime at no cost at either kgradb/meanwhile -here-on-earth / or at Spreaker.com and Deezer.com. Subscribe to KGRA and use my name as your entry code, PETER, and you can receive a 30% discount. No monologue tonight. I do just want to focus our time on tonight's return guest, a very good friend and close colleague of many years, and say that several weeks ago, my guest, Kathleen Marden, posted a statement on social media regarding somebody who had inquired if she had left the world of ufology, and she responded, as you will hear shortly. So I'm going to begin the show by introducing Kathleen with the introduction bio CV that I have used in one form or another in bringing her on every time she's been a guest on the show, and proud to have used as an introduction in bringing her on the stage at various conferences that I've had the privilege of being an MC at. I expect it will be the last time you will hear this particular introduction for Kathleen. And then I'm going to ask her to read the statement that she posted, and we'll begin our conversation from there. Kathleen Marden is an author, on-camera expert, consultant, international conference presenter, experiencer advocate, international experiencer, and hypnosis practitioner. Since 1990, she has researched the perplexing nature of UFOs and the non-human entities associated with highly advanced aerial vehicles via her own groundbreaking research, investigation, and experimentation. Kathleen is the 2021 recipient of the International UFO Congress Lifetime Achievement Award. For 30 years, she engaged in scientifically focused research on ET experiencers, the history of government involvement in major UFO studies, and the U.S. government's fusion of the facts. During this time, she was closely associated with the Mutual UFO Network as its director of the Experiencer Research Team and the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Encounters as a research consultant, and on their advisory board as well. This is combined to give her a depth of knowledge that few in the field possess. Her interest in UFOs and contact began in 1961, when her aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had a close encounter and subsequent abduction in New Hampshire's White Mountains. Kathleen has conducted an extensive multi-year investigation of their experiencers. Her newest book is Forbidden Knowledge, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation, and we'll be discussing it on this show. Kathleen's books are available in all formats at fine online bookstores everywhere, with autographed copies can be purchased in the USA by visiting her website, which is Kathleen-Marden.com. Kathleen Marden, welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be back with you again.
And I hope you and Charlie had a great Thanksgiving.
Oh, we did. We did. It was nice to be with family and grandchildren especially, but children as well.
And I guess one thing that has changed from the Thanksgivings of your childhood is the weather. Hit me with what the weather was on Thanksgiving for you guys in Florida.
Yes, it's beautiful down here. We had a son who flew down from Massachusetts, and it was freezing up there, and he had parked his car in the special spot where you had to park when there was a snowstorm. And we thought, oh, aren't we lucky not to have to deal with snow any longer? So
I don't really consider myself a Florida person in quotes, but starting this time of year, your little guest cottage seems like nirvana to me.
Well, being here seems like nirvana to us. To go out for our morning walk every day without having to put on a jacket.
Exactly.
And it's not too hot. There's a nice breeze. It's just beautiful.
So let's get into this with you, if you wouldn't mind, reading the statement that you posted, and then we'll go forward from there.
I would love to. I wrote, I was asked if the rumor is true. Have I left the field of UFO research? To be clear, I am no longer a scientific ufologist because I have moved beyond the type of UFO research that I was immersed in for 32 years. My research and investigation continues to grow and flourish, but I have stepped onto a different path. My new focus is on assisting contact experiencers and humankind in general to move beyond fear and the chains that bind us to a deeper understanding of consciousness. I am on a spiritual journey in service to humanity. It is personal, but can be shared with others through direct contact. It involves divine light and healing. It began when I was struck by a blinding light in May 2020 while in my home office. There was no thunderstorm activity in my area, nor was there a power surge. I can find no prosaic explanation for what occurred. I can only describe it as a powerfully loving energy that swept me off my feet and dropped me to my knees. If you have read Ray Hernandez's miraculous event on March 4, 2012, and how it altered everything in his life, my story is similar. Prior to this date, he had a material science orientation, but this experience transformed him and radically altered his worldview. His experiences have continued, as have mine. I will share additional information in the future, but I do not feel comfortable unveiling this knowledge at the present time, nor do I wish to invite skepticism. I am not delusional, misinterpreting sensory information, engaging in wistful thinking, or undergoing an emotional crisis. My new path is personal, but it is not in service to self. I have lived my life in service to others and will continue on this journey. My greatest desire is to bring hope to the hopeless, love to the unloved, and to do my part as each of us can in transforming darkness into light.
Thank you, Kathleen.
My pleasure.
I'm filled with thoughts and questions and feelings as well. I'm trying to remember, you began speaking on the conference circuit about 1990, which is probably about the time that we met, and our acquaintanceship became a friendship, a good colleagueship, and a good friendship over these many years. I, in my own way, progressing through this work over the past 45 or so years, I've passed through my own stages of transformation or moving along in your gaining attitude and experience. And I remember, maybe it's 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less, when you publicly acknowledged for the first time that you were not just a student of, an investigator, a writer, a researcher into the UFO alien abduction phenomena, but were also very much involved in it from early on in your life. And you had been struggling with that. And yet when you did it, you got a standing ovation. I think in part for just the courage to tell the truth, and damn, what anybody thinks about it. You are nothing if not a strong, single-minded, focused, intelligent woman. And I know you're not speaking allegorically when you say this experience brought you to your knees. Can you give us a little more? Can you set the scene of where you were, what you were doing when this light, this energy hit, and what the immediate consequences were for you in your thinking and your reflection on your life?
I'd be happy to tell you about it. I was in my office, right where I am now, and I was on my cell phone. I was talking to Chris Bledsoe, and I had worked on an investigation of two people, along with Chris, who were taken to Kraft. And so I was speaking with him and just catching up and interviewing him regarding his memories and that sort of thing. And then I started to talk to him about the smoking or burning tree that was on his property at that time.
Right.
And healing and that sort of thing. And all of this time, he is calling in an orb, a huge orb. And he was thanking, he's so gentle in his voice, thanking them for coming in, this consciousness for coming in. Something happened to me. It was not a thunderstorm. There was no lightning outside, but suddenly there was a huge flash of light in my office. And it was, when you see a photograph of a light being, or how a light being is described, it's like that. It's sort of triangular shaped. It's not defined edges. And it just felt very holy. And that's sort of what knocked me off my feet. I was just in awe. And I'd never had an experience like this. I've had many experiences, but this was something different and just incredible. And whatever that was seems to have remained with me. It's not there all the time, I don't think, but it helps me when I work in as a quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. Prior to this, when I would do the quantum healing part of it, I would, because the person is in hypnosis, and I would have gone through a past life regression or through a UFO investigation under hypnosis, that kind of thing. And then I would call on the person's higher self. And so that we would ask the higher self certain questions, and then I would ask the higher self to heal that person. And we would go through that person's body. They would have told me what healing they want. And then the higher self would work on healing that person without a much involvement from me. But what I noticed is suddenly there was this intense electrical like energy coming down through my crown chakra out into my body. And it was going down in my arms and my hands. And so I was sort of drawn to hold my arms out over that person. And my arms could be 1 foot or 2 feet above that person who is lying on this bed. And that person can feel either heat or the electrical tingling coming out of my body and into theirs. And the people that I've worked with are having a really great success rate regarding healing. So I'm in awe. I'm so thankful that I can help people even more than I could before, than I could previously. I just recently worked with a man in Canada who was not able to visualize. He wasn't able to picture anything in his mind. He was, I guess, born that way. And he always wanted to be able to visualize. So I worked just through Zoom with him. And it's only $30. I purchased it on my website and for a consultation. And I did this from a distance. And he's beginning to be able to visualize things. So I'm experimenting with this to see how far this can go. But I'm just so grateful to have whatever this energy is with me. And it feels great. It was one night I was meditating and it was with me. I could feel it. So I talked to it and I said, well, who are you? And the message I got that this individual is an agent of divine providence. So I thought, isn't that interesting? Maybe I need to focus more on, instead of evidence of UFO abductions and all of that, to something where I could really help people. Yes. And I'm not saying I'm no longer helping experiencers. Of course I am. But to branch out, to do what I can to help others. Yeah. And to do it, I would do it for free if I were independently wealthy. But I'm not. But, $30 is not much money, not much at all. A lot of people charge $200 for this kind of thing. But I just want to make it available to people.
So many thoughts come to me while you're speaking. One is, you and I, we know enough about each other and how we became the people we became, to know that we came from pragmatic, grounded, nuts and bolts, real world, grounded thinking. Mm-hmm. We both had wonderful parents, grandparents, uncles and aunts, all of whom imparted certain values, stated or unstated, that we took to be our own and grew with, and went on to become the people that we are. At the same time, it was my mother who pointed out to me when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old that I possessed the ability to see both sides of an argument, usually, even when I decidedly was on one side. And that in life, if that was something that stayed with me, which it has, it would be both a blessing and a curse, that it would make me more compassionate toward understanding aspects of people's lives who I had no real contact with or idea about, and at the same time allow me to move forward knowing that I was grounded in the work. At the same time, we both know that no matter how pragmatic we are, our worlds are filled with mysteries. In fact, I don't know about you, but years ago, I hit a point in my UFO-related work where you reflect on the colleagues that mentored you and that you looked up to when you first started working or you read early on, who are gone now, and thinking they didn't learn the answers to the questions they were pursuing in life. How do I feel about that? How am I going to feel if when fate taps me on the shoulder and I walk through that door into whatever happens next, if I didn't have the answers to all of the questions we come into this work with? And I thought about it and I thought, I'll be just fine. Imagine, number one, how boring life would be without mysteries. Oh my God, it would be terrible. Whether or not it's, in the Sherlock Holmes sense or the religious sense or philosophical, seeking is an important part of what we human beings do. And as you've described your experience, one term that has not come up is religious. This seems to be, it's very a spiritual transformation of sorts, but not theological. With all due respect to all the world's great religious leaders, you have not now received a message to follow Buddha or the Hindu tradition or Jesus any more than before. This is kind of self-guided and will reveal itself to you more and more as time passes. I just want to state here and get your response on it that you're taking this path, veering somewhat off the scientific ufology that you have pursued so diligently for more than 30 years. Well, not to mention the time before that on your own, from your own experiences, that in no way are you rejecting it as, a broken model or something. It's just not where you're going to be putting your emphasis and your best efforts. Other people, I'm in the work, I'm sure, still have your blessing to continue following their path in their way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm very proud of the work that I did. I think I made a substantial contribution to the UFO field. I will continue to work in the UFO field, but just differently because, I have a rule. I never set goals for myself because the universe just drops something on me. Every time I've ever set a goal, I failed. It didn't happen. So I stopped setting goals quite a long time ago. And now, here I am. I was going, well, universe, what's coming next?
Exactly.
What do I need to do now? And then things started to drop on me. So it seems right that I will be doing this work. I'm going to be actually doing a research project with a friend, Dr. Melanie Barton-Bragg, who I think was on your show one time with me. Maybe not. Denise Stoner, and I think Melanie and I were on together.
Melanie was, yes.
Wrong. Yes, okay.
I'll have to check.
Yes. So we're going to be working together on a project. We're just at the beginning of it, and you'll hear more about that later. So I'm becoming excited about that. But it's not going to be scientific ufology.
the fact that you're on the show and that you are a well-known presence in the world of serious international UFO studies does not address the fact that we have listeners and viewers here at all levels of involvement or understanding or interest in the world of UFOs and the paranormal. From your many lectures and documentaries and books, there are a good percentage of people who have a sense of who you are and how you got there. But because, again, I think the subject we're discussing is particularly important and the exception to the rule in this work. I want to take people back to an early point in your life, and in this first hour and some of the time that remains, give you an opportunity to set the stage, so to say, in another way. This is how you became who you became, with some images and pictures and a few anecdotes and things. And I'd like to begin with the fact that on my very first broadcast, almost 2 years ago, I went on by myself for 2 hours, which normally is suicide on the radio. You know what it's like to hold an audience for an hour and 20 minutes for conference, but 2 hours on your own without a net.
Oh, I think you could do it, Peter.
And nobody complained, but I think people were kind. My second week as a broadcaster with my very first guest, you were courageous enough to be my medical experiment, and things went off fairly well. And you sent me a number of wonderful photos. I was fortunate to meet your dad when he was still alive, and he reminded me of nobody more than my dad. And the pictures that you sent really filled in some wonderful pictures. The first one we're going to look at here is this one of two women,
Yes,
a blonde-haired child, and a cigarette.
my Aunt Betty never stopped puffing. So there I am with my Aunt Betty on the left, and the dog, and a woman. And I don't believe that woman is my mother. I think that my mother might have been taking the photograph.
Right. And so we have a first mystery here. And you remind me, the very first time I met your aunt, I was speaking at a small regional conference for New Hampshire MUFON, and I was taking a break out front smoking a cigarette back then. And your aunt came up to me, and I think her first words to me were, "You got a cigarette for me?" And they still resonate in my heart.
I have to laugh at that because she thought that the best way to meet new people was to sit at a table and put a pack of cigarettes on the table, because then that would attract people to the table. Those were the days when everybody smoked.
Absolutely. Oh, good times.
Yeah.
It's another photo of you and your brothers that I absolutely love.
Oh, yes. I love that photograph too. My mother used to pose us in some of the cutest poses. So my brother on the right is Glenn, who grew up to become a police detective.
Wow.
My little brother in the middle owns a plumbing company. And his name is Tom. And then there I am, my little girl on the left.
Cracking up.
The eldest of the three, yes.
Oh.
I was just so tickled to pose that way with my little brothers.
Truly so much fun. And here we are with your mom.
Yes.
A true New England childhood.
Yeah. It's I had an ideal childhood, growing up across the street from my grandparents' farm in the country in Kingston, New Hampshire. And it was great. Gardening, farming, climbing trees.
Amen. Amen. Tell us a little bit about your mom and dad, what they did besides being your parents.
My mother was highly intelligent, but she didn't go beyond high school, even though she graduated near the top of her class. My grandparents had already sent their 3 children to college, and my mother was the 4th out of 5. And I guess the money just wasn't there at that time. My grandfather had had a stroke, and things weren't going as well as they had been. So my mother decided to get married. My father was working up at the Boy Scout camp at the end of the street, and stopped by the farm because he had heard that the Barrett girls were very beautiful.
Oh.
And he decided to stop and ask for a glass of water. So he did, and he met my mother, and then he started to see her, and they were eventually married. He was from Newburyport, Massachusetts, which is a small, beautiful coastal city. And so they married. I was born, and life went on. My father ran a small business. He was worked first as a mason contractor, and then he worked on the Seabrook nuclear power plant. He was a foreman, a building foreman there. He worked for the Catholic Church. After that, he was a devout Catholic. He went to church every single day.
Wow.
When he grew older, when he was, retired and was able to go to church every morning. My mother worked making crafts on the farm. She raised goats. She milked cows. We had chickens. We had a garden, and she hooked rugs. She knit sweaters. She made clothing. She was very industrious, always working, but we always had a huge crowd of people around the house. All of the neighbors would come at a break time, I guess, on the farm every morning. They'd all show up.
Wow.
For donuts.
That's great.
And then at like 4:00 in the afternoon, many people would show up again. So it was always lively. There was a lot of activity and a lot of camaraderie, friendship, and interesting conversation around my childhood home.
Not that was the plan per se, but what a gift to give children to grow up in that atmosphere of, very family centric, but always people, caring, lively people around, and developing your social abilities by good models.
Absolutely.
Your father was a devout Catholic. Was your mother Catholic as well?
No, she wasn't.
And the fact that your father went to church every day, did he in any way try to encourage you or your brothers to follow Catholicism per se, or was that an objective of his?
I was raised in 3 churches. So I could walk to the Newton Junction Baptist Church. I could ride my bicycle there. I went to church there. I helped out with the Sunday school when I was a teenager.
Great.
Also, then the Episcopal Church. And that came about because my great-grandfather, built a church for my great-grandmother so that she wouldn't have to take the horse and buggy all the way up to Kingston Plain, which was about 4 or 5 miles on a Sunday morning. So there she had a church right next to their house. And so the Episcopal Church ended up buying that church. So all of a sudden we're Episcopalian.
Great.
And I liked it, it was good. But then when I was in Newburyport with my father and my grandmother, who was French Catholic, then I would go to the Catholic church with
That's
them.
great.
And as my father grew older and I spent more and more time with him, I went to church with him often.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah.
This next picture is a classic. In fact, I look at it and I can see one of my sisters in almost the same situation at about the same age. A birthday, or did you just usually wear that hat?
I was the second grade Valentine's Day queen.
Whoa! That's not in your bio.
And my grandmother took that photograph of me wearing the crown.
Beautiful. And belated congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. You didn't know I was a queen.
Now, in this picture, you are with your maternal or fraternal grandparents?
My maternal grandparents, and I grew up across the street from them.
Right.
And Raymond Barrett and Florence Barrett. And they were my Aunt Betty Hill's parents and my mother's parents.
Right. Wow. Did you ever have the sense or engage either one of them in conversation, obviously while they were alive, about anything paranormal or UFO related, or that came later, or you, was that ever?
No, not really. My grandfather liked to talk about the old days. I was very, very interested in what life was like for him when he was growing up.
Yes.
And also for my grandmother when she was growing up, and she was very industrious. She was always selling something. She made ice cream and she'd sell the ice cream, that sort of thing. And, so that was the gist of the conversation until after my grandfather had passed away. And my grandmother was alone, and there was a lot more talk. Barney had gone too. And so the women in the family were more together, Betty, my mother, my grandmother, and other women friends. And the conversation would be on UFOs. And that's when I heard about my grandmother's experience of having a craft come and land down in the backyard. Another craft landed in the side yard one night, that sort of thing.
Kathy, I know in your talks, and for me it resonates as one of the most, dramatic moments a young person could have in their life in a quiet way. That morning that your Aunt Betty called your mother to say that something had happened to her and Barney. Am I correct in remembering that called early when you were having breakfast and you heard your mom's part of that conversation?
No, just a little correction, Peter. I had returned home from school in the afternoon, gotten off the school bus, walked into the house, and there was my mother standing by the ironing board on the phone, smoking a cigarette and talking to Betty. And Betty was talking, of course, about the flying saucer that she and Barney had seen the previous evening when they were returning home through the White Mountains of New Hampshire. And my mother was concerned. And so when she hung up the phone, she told me what Betty had said. And my mother said that she had to call our neighbor, who was a physicist, to ask him what Betty should do, because Betty feared that she and Barney might have been contaminated. And, they felt really kind of slimy, clammy, that kind of feeling. Took long baths when they arrived home that morning. And so they were just fearful about radiation exposure, or
Wow.
they apparently were exposed to something. Maybe it was a disinfectant,
Yeah.
so these ETs wouldn't catch human germs. I don't know, but that's just wild speculation. I want to make that clear. But so within a couple of days, we went to Betty's and Barney's house. And then I heard the story right from my aunt's lips. I got to see the shiny spots on the trunk of the car that caused a compass needle to spin and spin. And also Barney was inside talking quietly with my father. And we were just instructed not to bother Barney that way.
Yeah.
That day. We usually had a great time with him. He'd play games with us, checkers and chess and, that kind of thing. But he was waiting for a phone call from Pease Air Force Base. They had called Pease. They'd talked to the officers, and he was expecting them to call back again. And he sat quietly speaking with my father. Later, my father told me that Barney was describing those non-humans that he saw on the ground to him. So, and it's in the early reports too. It's documented that this was not brought out through hypnosis for the first time, but Barney had conscious recall of having this experience that frightened him greatly.
Sure. And you were 12 when this happened?
I was 13.
I think it's fair to say for most of us that being privy to a conversation like that with key adults in your life would be life-changing. And
to say the least.
Yeah. But for you, that of course is fair to say, but you already had some sense of this other reality by that time in your life, didn't you?
Not really. I was older when I had my first conscious memory. I was 17 when I had my first conscious memory of this occurring. It was much later under hypnosis that I remembered having an earlier experience, or a couple of earlier experiences. But at that time, no, I had no interest in UFOs. I knew nothing about UFOs. I just, I didn't, fairies, ghosts, all kids hear about those things, but extraterrestrials coming here from another solar system.
Whoa. That's
is right.
All the more reason then that was a life-changing, personal paradigm-shifting day for you. This picture is you. Where and
Here
when?
I am at Niagara Falls a month or two before Betty and Barney went on that.
Oh my gosh.
Trip. And I showed them this photograph when they were visiting on the weekend. I saw them at least once a week. And I was telling them what a wonderful time we had. And Barney turned to Betty and said, "Do you think you'd like to go there sometime?" And she said, "Yes, I would." And so he decided to surprise her with this trip in September of 61. So am I responsible for what happened to them?
Surprise, honey. I'm glad we have senses of humor that allow us to be able to laugh at somebody else's rather dark moment and see it, of course, compassionately in perspective. The late W.C. Fields once said, "Comedy is tragedy happening to someone else." To a degree. I just wanted to mention before I forget and we move on, about 1985, I had a wonderful job for years in New York. I was house manager or theater manager for one of New York City's most legendary repertory companies. Our artist in residence was the great Geraldine Page, and the company was dedicated to remounting important plays from the American and the European theater that had great social redeeming value or high emotion and values that often was a formula for a commercial failure, but being that we were a nonprofit company, just fine. And for some years, we worked out of a theater under St. Peter's Church on 53rd Street, I think in Lexington or 3rd Avenue, and is a wonderful state-of-the-art theater, and we rented from the church. And Reverend Gensel, who's a lovely man and loved the theater and loved jazz. The church was every Friday night jazz vespers, and when a famous jazz man would die, they'd have the ceremonies often there and the wake. And one day he quietly comes in the theater while we have a working dress rehearsal. And of course, he had permission to come and go as he wished. And we're coming to a break. And who did he have with him? James Earl Jones. Oh. And I'm the house manager. We knew Reverend Gensel and everything, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Again, this is the mid 80s. And at a moment, I introduced myself to Mr. Jones and told him I was the house manager, but also that I did have a serious interest in the subject of UFOs, was familiar with the Hill case, and had seen the extraordinary film version that he and Estelle Parsons had done for, I think it was CBS, in 75 or so.
75.
It was, by today's CGI standards, the special effects, which in one case, in a repeating case, was small people in masks, was not as convincing as today. But with a little imagination and the fact that these two pros were electrifying in terms of creating these characters and their experience, I asked him what it was like to play your uncle in the movie. And his demeanor immediately changed. And he said it was, at that point in his life, certainly the most challenging role that he had ever been asked to play. And one of the things that he did in preparation for it was listen to the tapes of your uncle and Dr. Simon. And he said that first time he heard Barney shriek, he almost jumped out of his chair, and that he committed himself to doing the best job he could to creating that experience for people that watch that film. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
The UFO Experience, was the title. It's not
UFO
incident. Find it and watch it. I think one of the reasons it could never have been a commercial success was it was too scary, but brilliantly played. Moving along here, I have a photo of you. And who is this gentleman?
My father.
Looking good.
I think that was my 8th grade graduation dress.
Oh gosh.
And
white gloves and all.
Escorting me.
It's a great shot. And these two faces that so many of us know and have so much respect and admiration for. It must have been, unusual. Something people noticed when your aunt, a social worker, fell in love and married Barney, who worked for the United States Post Office, also a Democratic Party organizer to a degree, but who was Black. Was there any reverberation in your household about this, or Barney, given that you came from the people you did, was simply accepted as a good man and a good husband to your aunt, and part of the family from then on with no issues?
For the most part, family members accepted him. And, we grew up in a family where we judged people not by their color, their religion, their income, how much they owned. It was by the type of people
Yes.
they were by their character, by their manners, by their integrity. And so, Barney was welcomed into the family and accepted. There was only one family member, and this man had been a British subject. He grew up on the island of Nassau during a period of, I'd have to call it apartheid in Nassau. And he had a totally different point of view. And so there was difficulty there because of his ignorance. That's the way we looked at it.
Yeah, well said. I guess I was lucky enough to be brought up the same way. And although I remember we didn't have obviously any Black people marrying into our family, I would have noticed that. My mom, when we were kids, shocked some of her friends by selecting as our family doctor, our GP, the only Black physician in our village. I remember him well, Dr. Max Jurgen, a very distinguished man, soft-spoken, who made ever so many, it's a missing concept now, but they call them house calls back in the day, especially if me or my sisters had a cold or something. And, well, ignorance speaks volumes. And, when you take all fear down to the baseline, it's all fear of the unknown in paranormal and UFO studies and life. And we'll be getting back to that in a bit. But this is a very special photo in your life, and it marks an important historic event. Can you share that with us?
Yes. On the lower right are Betty and Barney, and this is the New Hampshire presidential delegation to Lyndon Johnson's inauguration. I'm in the back row, the third from the left.
Yeah.
And Betty and Barney were wonderful mentors for me when I was growing up, and I campaigned as much as I could as a teenager, and they certainly were very active in campaigning. In fact, Barney had received an award from Sergeant Shriver for the great work that he did with funding from the poverty program, U.S. poverty program, to set up the Rockingham County Community Action Program. And also he worked on a literacy program. He received an award for that, for setting up the literacy program in the state of New Hampshire, so that in those days, you had to pass a literacy test in order to vote. Gosh. This was for voters' rights in the state of New Hampshire, so that people would be able to vote. So he did some remarkable things in the community and also throughout the state.
The excitement of going to a presidential inauguration, that's pretty heady stuff.
Oh, yes.
Wow. And with, these very special relatives of yours, what an amazing window into the highest level of the ceremonies of the workings of democracy. It's a pretty special memory.
It was terrific. One of the best memories of my life, I have to say. This was on the day that I graduated from high school. And the photographer that you see is Paul Fusco for Look magazine.
Oh, for gosh sakes.
John Fuller was going to have 2 articles published in Look magazine about Betty and Barney. And they wanted to show photographs of Betty and Barney on a typical family-oriented weekend.
Yeah.
And so, here I am with Betty and Barney. And Paul Fusco, who attended my graduation.
That's great. That's great. You some years ago, following one of our favorite yearly events on the UFO calendar, the Exeter, New Hampshire UFO Festival, you and I and your dear friend and colleague and writing partner on the terrific Abduction Diaries, Denise Stoner.
The Alien Abduction Files.
The Alien Abduction Files. Oh, not working from notes, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Live radio, folks. You're watching it. You took us to the final resting place of Betty and Barney, and it was such a privilege, and it was such a beautiful afternoon, and I thank you for that always. And this is a good time for us to take our break. This is Peter Robbins. The radio show is Meanwhile Here on Earth, and my special guest tonight is Kathleen Marden. We'll be back in 4. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
And we are back with Meanwhile Here on Earth with me, Peter Robbins, and my special guest for this evening, Kathleen Marden. Kathy, we left off at a perfect moment because this next photo which is one of the last that we have before we turn strictly to a conversation, I expect was a very special day for you.
Oh, yes. That's when I married Charlie.
Yeah.
There I am, and there's my Aunt Betty between the two of us.
Yeah. Charlie, who I absolutely adore, and I'm very happy that you are married to.
I am too. He's a perfect husband.
Good.
Great man.
If he agrees with us, everything's just the way it should be.
And he loves you too.
Okay. What were the circumstances that first linked you up with a colleague who you knew, of course, as a writing partner? And that person, of course, is somebody absolutely beloved, a giant in the world of UFO studies, who left us a few years ago and who we miss very much, but are very fortunate to have the memories that we have of Stanton T. Friedman.
Yes. I love seeing that photograph. It brings back memories. We were in Roswell when that photograph was.
Oh, yeah, the convention center, sure.
Yes, yeah. We had just spoken, or we were about to speak at the convention center. What brought us together to write that book, Captured? Well, my Aunt Betty Hill said to me, Kathy, if you need any help with that book, I recommend that you contact Stanton Friedman. I had been writing that book. I'd been doing the research and the investigation for years.
Sure.
And I had written quite a lot of the manuscript, but there was a challenge to me. I do all my own research. I don't take what somebody else has written and repeat it. I go to the archives. I do the investigation. And so there I was, challenged with a part of that story that I simply did not want to spend years studying. And that was the star map. And Stanton had been instrumental in the scientific investigation of Betty's star map. After Marjorie Fish had constructed those 14 models of our local galactic neighborhood out 54 light years in all directions, and after many, many years had finally found a match. She didn't find that match until we had advanced technologically. We had better distance data. And with that better distance data, she was able to go back and reconstruct a model, and there it was, a match. And the stars on that map had special properties. It wasn't just stars scattered out in our solar system.
We need to say it was a three-dimensional model, which is very sophisticated and which backed up ultimately real scientific factual research.
Yeah. Not in our solar system or even in our galaxy. This was something that she had done a tremendous amount of work on. And what she discovered is that all the stars on Betty's map are sun-like stars, although only 5% of the stars in our local galactic neighborhood, out 54 light years in all directions, are sun-like. Also, it makes sense, nearest star to nearest star, if you're going to travel, instead of being, as Stanton used to say, spread out like raisins in a thick loaf of raisin bread, plain like pepperoni on a pizza. So instead of bouncing around here and there to travel, you just move on that plane, which makes travel a lot more sensible. One of the astronomers who vetted Marjorie's work said that if we lived on Zeta Reticuli, those were the two base stars, Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, if we lived there and we wanted to explore the sun-like stars in our local galactic neighborhood, that is the route that we would take.
Wow.
And our sun was on that map with 2 lines connecting Zeta Reticuli 1 up to that map, up to that sun, I mean. So Stanton found scientists to vet Marjorie's work when they were impressed with it, when they said that this was pretty exciting because it could indicate that Betty had actually been shown this star map on the craft, and that it was accurate, and that this was a discovery that it seemed like this could have happened. And Stanton was so impressed with that, and he had met Barney before Barney died. He had met Betty many times over the years, but he was impressed by Betty and Barney. And he was the first to publish on Marjorie's work.
Yes.
So he was the perfect person for me to go to, recommended by my Aunt Betty. I told him that. And I had gone to the MUFON Symposium in 2004 or 5. Betty had cancer at the time. She'd been diagnosed with what would be terminal cancer. And so I started talking to Stanton, and I asked him, I said that Betty had recommended him. Would he have an interest? It was 2005 when he came to visit me in Stratham, New Hampshire. I lived in a condo with Charlie up there. This was sort of the interim period before we were going to move to Florida.
Right.
We sold our big house that we raised our kids in. And so, and it was close to Betty. So he came and he spent a few days with us. I had the entire archival collection, which I set up and donated to the University of New Hampshire. But Betty made sure that I had a full set of copies of everything and more, because I did an extraordinary amount of research and investigation myself. And Stanton was impressed and with the work I had done. And he said that he was also impressed by the fact that I was being scientific and unbiased in my approach, and he agreed to work with me. So that's how we came together to write that book. And then we just got along well together. We worked well together. We sold books well together. And, we became friends. And so we continued to work together and ended up writing 3 of my 6 books are with Stanton.
I can't imagine that you could have ended up in any respect with a better collaborator on that book and the books that followed. And God, the way my mind works, before we leave the star map and move on, I will never be able to think about Marjorie Fisher's star map again without thinking of raisins and pepperoni. That's not necessarily a good thing, folks, but again, that's the way my little mind works. A photo that made me smile, this is about a dozen years ago, you and I and our dear friend and colleague Jennifer Stein.
Yes,
and
she looks so pretty.
And also Jennifer, who is the executive producer of the extraordinarily good Travis Walton documentary, Travis, the True Story of Travis Walton, acted as executive producer of the very memorable DVD that you and she created, or that you created and she brought to fruition, which includes remastered audio of the hypnotic regressions with Dr. Simon, which are absolutely shattering. Is that available on your website, or is there a place where people can find that DVD? Do you know?
If people are interested, they can write to me. I don't have it up on my website. I probably should put it up there. What it is not all of the hypnosis tapes. It is my comparative analysis of Betty's and Barney's statements under hypnosis. So I lined up their statements to Dr. Simon. What Barney said, how he described everything, the trip, even in Montreal, and how Betty described the same thing, so that you will get an idea of their individual personalities, their attention to detail, how Barney was much more analytical, I think, and conservative, reserved, and how Betty was much more descriptive than Barney.
I think it's fair to say that your aunt, and this is not uncommon in the world of men and women, was able to address her feelings, her emotions more effectively than Barney, who kept them inside and was considerably more at effect of what had happened to him.
Yes. She, first of all, did not have conscious recall of observing those non-humans. She was in the car, which Barney had parked in the middle of the road because the craft was hovering about 100 feet above their vehicle. And so he just came to a stop in the middle of the road so he wouldn't be directly under the craft. Fortunately for him, but it probably just delayed what ended up happening. All the people that I've talked to who have tried to drive under the craft have not succeeded. They've ended up in the craft immediately. So anyway, Barney is the one who walked into the field and saw those non-humans as the craft descended lower, and he became terrified that he was going to be captured. He could see that they were engaged in a plan, and that plan was to capture him. And, so that was part of it. She also had a series of dreams after they returned home. And oftentimes when you have working through something that is traumatic or causing anxiety, you will dream about it, and you can dream precisely what occurred, but there might be some fantasy mixed in with that as well. So that's what I believe happened, that she worked through this. She had a lot more knowledge, I think, in terms of conscious recall of all of it than Barney had, but he had more knowledge of eye-to-eye contact, through binoculars with those entities, and finding himself on this dirt road with tall trees all around. And Betty remembered that too, the roadblock. They went out looking for that, beginning not too long after they had their event, trying to find that spot. So Barney just wanted to forget about it. He wanted to go on with his life. I mean, a quote from him is, "Betty, we better forget about this as fast as we can. No good can come of it. Don't tell anybody." They had agreed not to tell anybody, but then Betty told my mother. And we were sworn to secrecy.
Wow. The event, of course, happened in 1961, but broke internationally, as I recall, 4 years later in 1965. Can you remind us of those circumstances when your aunt and uncle became very public people in the world?
Yes. They were never going to make this public to a wide range of people. They spoke to people in the Air Force, military officers who gave them support. They spoke to scientists UFO investigators, but they thought it was confidential.
Yeah.
And so they were just going to go on with their lives and the good work they were doing in New Hampshire in politics. Yes. But then the story got out, and John Luttrell, who worked for a Boston newspaper, had spoken with a friend of Betty's. And she advised John to get in touch with Betty and Barney, which he did. And he wanted to meet with them. And they would not meet with him. He actually drove up and interviewed all of their neighbors.
Oh, my.
One night. And he talked to Pease Air Force Base. He talked to Project Blue Book people. He talked to NICAP, National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, and had a great deal of information, and ended up publishing 5 days in a row, very good selling newspaper articles on Betty's and Barney's experience and the hypnosis. And he was very respectful.
Yes.
He was very impressed by the degree of respect that he showed. He portrayed them as highly credible individuals who were highly thought of by people in their community.
Yes.
I did not like the fact that he put their address and phone number in the newspaper article. Betty and Barney were devastated. I was reading something just this morning, where an interview with Dr. Simon, where he was speculating that maybe they wanted this all along. I saw their reaction. They drove from their home in Portsmouth down to my grandparents' house, and we sat together as a family. They were quite upset by all of this. What did it mean for them? Were they going to lose their jobs? And so we sat as a family and discussed it and came to a family decision on what they should do. And that decision was that they would speak about it. So they did speak shortly thereafter in Dover, New Hampshire, at the Unitarian Church, and they were introduced by the public information officer from Pease Air Force Base. And they didn't talk about the abduction. They talked about the close encounter. And John Fuller was there that night, and he was kind of a mainstream writer. Yes. Although he had written an article for Look magazine on the Condon Committee. No, that was later, though. That was back in 1969 when he wrote that. But I think it was 69, something like that. But so he offered them a book deal. He wanted to write a book about them. The cat was out of the bag. And so they decided that they would let him write the book as long as Ben Simon, neuropsychiatrist, would agree with it and express his own opinions. And so it happened, and it became a New York Times bestseller. It was published around the world in several languages. It was a big book, and it led to the movie, The UFO Incident, several years later.
Fuller was a very good writer and a very good researcher. And considering the number of books that have come out on the subject of UFOs, certainly hundreds in the English language alone, since Interrupted Journey was published in 1965, it still remains a case we can point to with pride, if you will, in terms of a respectful investigation, well written up So kudos to him on that. And Kathy, thank you for, in a sense, backtracking. The main purpose of our evening is not to discuss your past, but I particularly appreciate your giving our listeners and viewers an opportunity to understand how you got from there to here. And
I just want to say one more thing, if I may.
Please.
In John Fuller's archival collection at Boston University, we discovered, and I'm talking about Stanton and myself, letters between him and his publisher, and they would not let him tell the story the way it occurred.
Oh my.
He had to change it. And I think that the changes that he made have contributed to confusion over what occurred. They thought that it wasn't exciting enough, I guess. They said that it would not be a book unless he altered it. And so he is a very good writer, but the text for the hypnosis tapes are not always what Betty and Barney said. A lot of what they said is left out. It's not in the book. And that scene where there's tension in the restaurant in northern New Hampshire, it didn't happen. That didn't happen. There were a few teenagers in there, but they weren't paying attention to Betty and Barney, and Betty and Barney were not paying attention to them. They were sitting at the counter having coffee and a little snack. So there was tension put into the book. There were the part with Barney going to the trunk and getting a tire iron out at the field. No, that didn't happen. He had his gun on the seat. It was Betty's gun, actually. And he put that into his pocket as he got out of the car and walked to that field. This wasn't something where the UFO is hovering 100 feet overhead and you get out of the car, go to the trunk, open the trunk, and rummage around for a tire iron. I mean, there's so much in that book that, I think it's very important. Although it's extraordinarily well written, it's unfortunate that
it is
change parts of it.
I'm going to make an educated guess that some of the hand-wringing constraints and unfortunate decisions of the publisher were all around fear of ridicule in the publishing industry. We can say so much, but if we state this other stuff, true or not, we're going to be criticized, made fun of, had ridiculed behind our back in the industry. And, well, nobody likes to be ridiculed. You can be rich and powerful or, just some regular person or a big company. And this has informed the history of the study of UFOs from the get-go, really only begun to change in early 2018, late 2017. So this kind of came with the territory. Coming back to the present, I know, starting with myself for an example, I had a point some years ago where I had another, I wouldn't even call it an epiphany, and it had to do with, what do I actually know that I could prove in a court of law, that I could bring an evidence base to and be absolutely convincing on this, that, or other aspect of UFO, UAP phenomena. And I realized not a heck of a lot. I know, well, let me put it this way. There's a Zen maxim of definition of a Zen beginner is knowing that you know nothing and having it be all right. You and I are more than Zen beginners in the subject of ufology and related aspects, but I know I can say with certainty that I am absolutely unsure exactly what's going on. I can say, I am convinced beyond a reasonable doubt, based on an assortment of information, that among other explanations for UFO, UAP related phenomena, I'm going to paraphrase here Stanton Friedman, the question is not, I may even be quoting him exactly, the question is not, are UFOs representative of advanced technology under intelligent control, coming and going with impunity? The question is, has one ever been? And the answer to that is an overwhelming yes. So I can say in my area of focus over the decades, I am convinced that we are being visited by other intelligences. I've never felt comfortable with the term aliens. And it's not a very friendly term. And when I really started researching it, you run searches and you find a lot of information on people entering the United States illegally. Other intelligences, not so much. I am convinced that we are being visited by a variety of them for reasons best known to themselves. Some of them, I am convinced, very likely the ones responsible for and who you were talking with, Chris, with when you had this experience, this bolt of light, who are positive, who are beatific, who want to assist human beings in evolving and taking that first step. And I won't credit it to mankind because I see this as something that is driven overwhelmingly by the world of men, of stop our basic, most common activity with men in other parts of the world, which is where the line is drawn in the dirt. And if you have stepped over that line, nothing personal, but I have to kill you because you're on my side of the line now. And that's what we guys do. And we do it very well. And now with even bigger sticks and clubs and stones. At the same time, I also have come to my own personal conclusion that some of these intelligences may not be thrilled with our shepherding and husbandry of this planet, that may not be thrilled about humanity in general, and might be just as happy if we were not on this real estate and it was freer of our destructive impulses. I think there's room for all of those views. And I wondered, in looking back on your views on the visitors, to use the term that we Whitley popularized to a degree some years ago, do you see a profound change in the way you see that spectrum of intelligences, or does the view that you approach them with now, is it informed by another sensibility, or you're seeing it through, a different set of binoculars? How would you describe your perception of them in the before-after sense, if that makes sense?
Well, when I was younger and all of this was happening, right up until probably 12 years ago, maybe a little longer, I was terrified by what was occurring. I walked with trepidation if I had to get up during the night because I didn't know if they were going to be there to get me. And a lot of times when they took me, I was awake and I had conscious recall of part of the experience. And I finally came to the point where I needed answers, not just the extreme ends of the spectrum. They're all good or they're all bad, but I needed answers. So I needed to take a middle road. And I think that that's the best way if you're going to explore something as objectively as possible. So this is why I ended up on working on 3 studies on about 5,000 experiences. 2 of them that I initiated, and the third one Ray Hernandez initiated, but I worked on it. So that gave me a great deal of information about what experiencers have in common. And then I, of course, set up in 2011 for the Mutual UFO Network, their experiencer research team, now the experiencer resource team, to assist people who were having difficulty having had these experiences where they were not going to be judged. They were going to be talking with a person who understood them. They're not going to gain notoriety from it or anything else. This is confidential, and it's to help those people to come to an understanding of what is occurring in their lives. So, and it was through sheer force of will that I developed a way, a method to overcome my fear. And, it was always the fight or flight response that would kick in, and then terror.
Yes.
And so I asked Denise Stoner to hypnotize me and to give me some key words for rapid induction. And then I used those on myself. I practiced every day instead, and I still do it every day. So if they come into my environment now, I only need to think those words, and I immediately become relaxed. And they have been very kind. I haven't had contact with them in probably 5 or 6 years at least, but they communicated with me. They were much kinder in the way they responded to me, the interactions that we had. So I was very pleased with that. And then in 2016, I was invited to take part in a scientific experiment. And that experiment was to study a man, to look for evidence or not. His name is Kevin Briggs, and he claimed that he had had a relationship with ETs since he was a boy, that he was able to communicate with them. And so if I was going to, it was a challenge. I wanted to look for evidence. Is this real, or is this his imagination? Or, is this really extraterrestrials, or is it interdimensionals? What is going on here? And so we assembled a team, and we worked with him for 2 years, meeting once a month to ask questions, to take in our gadgets, our instruments, to look for evidence. And we found evidence. And they showed us craft, and they showed us orbs, and they showed us that they can come into our environment and communicate with us telepathically, and all we feel is electrical energy going through our bodies. A very strong electrical tingling. And so in Forbidden Knowledge, I've put 120 of the questions that we asked, and they're specific answers. These aren't platitudes like a lot of people got through channeling. There are some very good answers, I believe, to those questions, and they've held up against other channelers that I've spoken with or whose work I've studied too. So it's interesting, very interesting to me. They say that they are extraterrestrials. I can't know for certain, even though they've shown us craft, that sort of thing. But they seem to know a lot about this planet and the history of this planet and why they're here. And they've talked about their technology, and they've talked about the dimensions and the differences between the dimensions. There is a healer among them, and that healer is a ninth dimensional who has healed each of us when we've been ill.
Mm-hmm.
So, it ended up being a good experience, even though Stanton told me that I was going to destroy my reputation and my career by doing this. He thought it was awfully risky, but I thought that I would never speak of it to anyone. Except for, of course, I told Stanton and everything that I was doing, and he would tell me everything. We continued to work on things together, documents, and that sort of thing. But, so I did finally write the book and put the information in, because I came to the point where I thought that it was extraordinarily important information and that everyone should have that information.
Yeah.
It could change the world.
Yes. Several thoughts come to mind. The first is that in the formal world of UFO studies, the term ufology has gotten quite a tarring over the last few years, and a lot of people just see it as shorthand for the worst aspects of ego and pseudoscience, etc. I think it's a perfectly good word, but in the formal world of UFO studies, we have almost from the get-go two emerging philosophies. One is at the extremes. Welcome the Space Brothers. You're advanced, much more advanced than we are. You are here trying to assist us in saving us from ourselves, basically, and finding some sort of path to evolving. And at a certain point, and I often find myself stuck with the best models for what may or may not be happening behind the curtain are based in science fiction and the great thinking of creative writers rather than in science, just as a model. In that spirit, the great Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, his idea of the Federation, that there is this group of intelligences in the universe representing various civilizations and beyond the universe. And in order to become part of it, you must at the least set aside destroying yourselves or attempting to do that before we're going to even begin to deal with you. It's a lovely thought, and I think may well represent part of the reality here. But looking at the great spectrum of possibilities right now, again, this very positive group of humans united in thinking we really need to do our best to straighten out our own act, to interact with them even on the most rudimentary level beyond the one-to-one experiences that people have. At the other end of that is caution, wariness, again, informed by great science fiction. One of my personal favorite episodes of The Twilight Zone that we grew up with, the one where the giant alien comes to the United Nations, and they do begin to assist us in all manner of things, and they give us a book that translators in the basement are working on translating, and the very end, where they're taking people on junket tours to their planet and helping us with food and cancer and all that stuff, it's a cookbook. And even though they seem nice, there's a problem here.
Is that why they're so worried about toxicity in our bodies?
If they're going to be bad, that's really let's go for that one. I know, I found it very entertaining as a child and hoped it wasn't true. But do you feel it's fair to say that in the myriad of intelligences that come and go that we're dealing with, trying to make sense of and make contact with, that in fact we are dealing with the possibilities of ones who are not good, they're not nice, as well as ones represented, I think, very well and increasingly in the research of free people like Ray Hernandez and yourself and other researchers focusing in on the positive, the transformative, the major interest of our dear friend and late colleague, Dr. John Mack at Harvard, or that's a problem in perception, and that if we bring fear to the experience, we're going to be frightened. But if we're open to it, it could be positive. Do you think that it's a one or the other thing, or that we are in fact dealing with negative intelligences as well as positive ones?
We're dealing with both the negative and the positive. You know, I was listening to a show. Now that I'm not working 7 days a week full time in scientific ufology, I actually have the ability, the time to listen to other people's interviews. And I was listening to an interview with Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan and Dr. Avi Loeb today. And they were talking about the problem with science and with ufology. And that they were criticizing believers on both ends. In science, it is the belief that this is impossible, therefore it can't be, and no funding should be allocated to that kind of study. And if you're interested, you're just going to lose your job. Among ufologists, it's, I guess they were thinking, well, there's no funding anyway. And the ufologists are tend to be polarized. Either it's all good or it's all bad, or they are three-dimensional entities coming here through space to visit our planet. But you know, you need to stay the middle ground. That's what both of them were saying, and that's what I have done for years. Not to form these strong, polarizing positions where people, I know that fear sells, and a lot of people like to engender fear in others, and you know, they'll be on the edge of their seats listening to that person. But it's not fair to say that it's all bad. It's not fair to say that it's all good, because it runs the spectrum. I've worked with people who have had the most horrific experiences that you could imagine. But I've also worked with people who are in contact with these wonderful entities that, you know, who heal them, who do all sorts of wonderful things. Who are here to guide and assist humanity. So, I mean, it's not left or right, black or white. It runs the spectrum, and it's really important to see the shades of gray.
That you've answered one of the most important questions I could ask, as far as I'm concerned, in a way that I kind of was hoping that you would. Essentially, you have transferred your focus, rather than the continued study and research into individual UFO cases, abduction cases per se, and, you know, hard metal terms, to a very natural shift in focus on impulses of doing what you can, starting recently, to make your focus. It's something that you've done anyway. It's part of your nature and character, I think, to focus in on what you can do to assist individuals and all of us in living, even if we're deeply involved in this, even if the subject is deeply involved in us, and I mean that actually as well as allegorically, that your focus is on doing the best you can to assist others in finding a center point, happiness, peace of mind, some understanding in their lives. And that's a major positive commitment toward humanity. And the work will go on in terms of the hard metal stuff and people continuing to study and publish. I know for myself, again, some years ago, hitting a point of saying my focus has shifted in this work. And it's nothing mysterious to me about how it happened. I came into this unwillingly and uninformed on a certain conscious level, with my sister sharing with me details of her very conscious childhood memories of what we would now categorize as an absolutely archetypical abduction experience, right through to her descriptions in words of what she was seeing and happening around her, in sometimes word for word memories of what she was hearing in her head in terms of the gray beings that she was interacting with. And that you are essentially saying here, my own experience of obsessed with the abduction phenomena for some years, literally needing to enter into therapy with a remarkable therapist to help me normalize it. When this information was shared with me, with my sister, following my sharing with her my conscious memories that had returned to me of the repressed memory sighting that we had as kids, and then her sharing with me parts of the abduction phenomena that followed, it took me some years to not be owned by the subject and be starting to do my own research and working many cases, investigation into landings, contact events, and realizing at a certain point, my obsession with who are they? Where are they from? What do they want? What do they really look like? What is their motivation? What is their relationship with humanity? All important questions that I'm still interested in. But I realized a shift had happened some years ago that with the time that I have left, which I hope will be long and healthy, that my major interests are much more now about what I can do in my efforts, and right here as a weekly radio show, a host is one of them, to find common ground in this subject for people all over the world who more and more may relate less and less to each other in a positive manner. And if I don't have the answers to these questions by the time I die, I'm fine with that. To paraphrase Martin Luther King, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And you and I are certainly on that. And I salute you for this shift in direction and being very public about it. I think it's also fair to say, before turning the stage back to you, that I know when I came into this work, it wasn't derogatory, but people who are much more involved in the touchy-feely aspects and the what ifs and the welcome to these other intelligences, and I trust you innately, was seen as somewhat naive and mystical. The fact is, life is one giant stew, and the paranormal and the world of UFO studies that spin around us, what we absolutely know and can prove about it is a very minimal aspect of what actually is. The world of our perceptions. Here we are, human beings, think that we know stuff based on the size of our brain, our ability to put things together, the small range of hearing we have compared to other creatures, the almost laughable range of vision that we have compared to animals who we are more advanced than in some senses, but in other senses not so much. And in our fears and our opinions our willful ignorance on some things because we're frightened of the truth or the possibilities around them. We're all struggling with this. And the fact that some of us have higher visibility in the work is not a mark of that we're experts, a word that makes me cringe in this work. I don't know about you, but when you're brought onto a show and somebody refers to you as an expert, I will sometimes joke and say this for me is kind of an existential joke. I'm an expert in the unknown. Let's think about that for a moment. like the old jokes of why do psychics have conferences? Just
well, that's what Hollywood calls us, is
exactly
on-camera experts.
Yeah,
because we know a lot about the topic.
Yeah,
more than the average person.
No question about it. And at this point, I think we can afford, and all right here, to be somewhat playful and self-deprecating about it. We're all in the trenches here together, doing our best to figure it out. We have more time. We have more experience, you and I. You have, in a sense, kind of a royal pedigree in the world of UFO studies for some people because of the extraordinarily well-documented and well-known aspects of your aunt and uncle. But again, you're doing your best to figure it out as well. And we can use every person we can get in this work with a positive attitude, who is not just dedicated to finding the truths, but to doing it in a manner with goodwill, with love in our hearts, with support for people who are struggling with this subject. And as we come into our last very few minutes, it's coming right by here, I want to let people know that, number one, your latest book, which is Forbidden Knowledge, is available online, Amazon and other fine online bookstores, as well as signed or inscribed copies directly from you through your website, which people should know is, not surprisingly, Kathleen Marden, and that's MARDEN.com. Anything you want to add as we come into the last minute here?
I hope that younger people who come up in this field will do the work, the kind of work that we did.
Yeah.
The science, the investigation, not just to be a pretty face in front of a camera, based on what they've read in somebody's book, but having done the research themselves, having stepped forward to help other experiencers who are going through the same thing and looking for someone to connect with, someone that they can talk to look for common ground with. And I think that that is so extraordinarily important. I know that some young people are carrying on with this type of work where they're talking to other experiencers who are reaching out for help. And
Kathleen,
doing it confidentially, and that's really important.
I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. And because of the profound nature of what we've been dealing with, I'd like to invite you back maybe this spring to talk about where you are then compared to now and pick up our dialogue here. Again, Kathleen Marden's website is Kathleen-Marden, MARDEN.com. Our guest next week, by the way, is Australian UFO researcher, investigator, and writer George Simpson, who has written a remarkable book on a case that still haunts me from 1978, the Frederick Valentich missing person event, where he and his plane were there one minute and then gone the next. And George Simpson has a real personal part of this story that I think makes him the ideal writer for this show. And he'll be doing it live, 15-hour difference with us next Monday from Australia. If you've enjoyed this show, please tell your friends. Hope to see you or be on your listening schedule next week. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.